Hello, everybody who joins me in this virtual classroom. I don't know. It's an online classroom. It's not a virtual classroom. My husband used to always be like, sorry, I don't know all of your technological savviness. Nor do I have my hairstylist doing anything worthwhile for this do that I've got going on here today. We're here in the philosophical classroom. Who's we? Well, it's me. I'm the teacher. I am Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm the teacher. We're in the classroom, the philosophical classroom. Let's start recording this, just in case we need some recording over here. Although we have had excellent connection. Thank you, Xfinity. I'll make sure I say thank you to you when I also have a positive experience. Psychologically speaking, that should generate some positive consequences. Or we also call them rewards. We are talking about, how about that for a title? So, okay, yes, it was George Harrison. If you were there last hour with me and I couldn't think of the fourth Beatle, who is the third Beatle? Because the fourth Beatle is always Ringo Starr. And it'd be okay if the tribute were to Ringo Starr and I forgot George Harrison, but the tribute was to George Harrison and I forgot George Harrison. While my guitar gently weeps, Tom Petty and Prince, woo! I am telling you, nothing like it. Nothing like it. I wonder if I could do a little piece of it. And I wonder if I'm going to get nabbed for it. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. You have to look it up. We could just have a debate. Seems to me, I don't know. Would that be copyrighted? Likely so. It likely would be copyrighted and I'd probably get kicked off and have to do a whole bunch of finagling, which I hate doing. So I'm not going to do it, but go look it up. Tom Petty, Prince, George Harrison's son, ELO, whatever that guy's name is. Paul McCartney's there, but nobody says anything about Paul McCartney being there. And who's the guitar player who does that jazzy stuff? He's playing the guitar. And then, oh dear Jesus, I would not want to be that guy because Prince puts him to shame. Oh my gosh. Okay, get a move on. That's not why we're here. Although, because I love music so much and always have since I was a little girl, Sister Golden Hair was probably the first song. Yeah. I always think of Sister Christian then, which was much later, but Sister Golden Hair was the first song that I memorized and was my favorite song. And I think I was 5, which isn't that young. I was no musical genius, but that's not why you're here. You're not here to hear about my music, but you are here. I have to talk about it. Come on. With every mistake, we must surely be learning. While my guitar gently weeps. Oh my gosh, right? If that does not move you to I don't know, a whole lot of emotions, I think. It makes me want to cry whenever I hear it. But since the song doesn't stop on that lyric, I don't usually want to cry. While my guitar gently weeps doesn't make me cry. With every mistake, we must surely be learning. That makes me want to cry. And I think it does. Because we're not. With every mistake, oh, I'm not kidding you. It just makes me want to weep right now. I cannot even say that again. It makes me want to cry. With every mistake, apparently I can. With every mistake, we must surely be learning. And no. And philosophically speaking, I just cannot see any evidence of evolution. I can't see any evidence of it. None. It's a theory, and I see no evidence. I see no physical evidence of evolution. I haven't seen a creature evolve. I've seen some Galapagos Island beaks change and then go back to what they used to be. That's all we've seen. We're not saying we can't adapt, but adapt is not evolving. Adapting is not changing species as they suggest. And philosophically or psychologically or intellectually or emotionally speaking or spiritually speaking, the essence of the human being, you can debate all you want about the physical evolution of the human being. I see none of it. Right? Especially with this kind of sexual dysmorphism, right? Sexual. I think that's a good enough word, right? That certainly is not progress from an evolutionary perspective. If we're confused more than ever about our sexuality, so much so that we are have a huge rise in relationships that cannot produce offspring, that is the furthest thing from evolution and from Darwin's theory you could get. It's the furthest thing you can get from Darwinian theory. You might say, well, it still demonstrates a change. It demonstrates a change, but Darwin's theory was an adaptation for the better. If you're running around hoping on a bunch of mutations, my guess is it's not going to happen for the better. Okay, so hopefully I've stirred up your interest a little bit in what we're talking about. So yeah, I want to talk about this for the philosophical classroom in part because I have to think about where I left off. This philosophical classroom goes all over the board sometimes. And that's the truth. I was like, all right, I have to go take a look at where we left off with this philosophical classroom because I am just like, it needs to be cohesive, right? We need to understand where we've left off and where we've been, which I don't. So I'm literally looking at the slides. Yeah, okay. So what I wanted to bring out here for this philosophical classroom today is all of the things. I keep trying to sort of reach back into what we've been talking about and then gathers a little bit of new information and then sort of, whip it together a little bit, right? I wouldn't say whip it because I don't think I go fast. Which I really enjoy. The pace of the classroom was really stupid. And it's not just, the pace of the classroom, it's the amount of information that I'm producing and the amount relative to the amount of information that's actually being learned. If I can produce, this much information, but 75% of it is learned, then I won't produce, this much information, where we're lucky if 1% of it gets learned. And that's the truth, because you cannot, when you slow down, it does improve the learning process. So it's not because it's a smaller amount to learn, it's because you slowed it down to improve the learning process. So a lot more deep learning is going on. So I don't mind slowing down this process a little bit, or slowing it down relative to a classroom is what I mean, not slowing it down relative to how slow I've been going. But we have gotten a lot of information. You may not think so, but we have. Number one, and I bet you do. I bet you think you've gotten a lot of information. But number one, we've gotten information relative to a lot of these psychological studies. And that's important because we're trying to take a look at, again, our overall thesis has to do with humanity and human dignity. And are we promoting it every hour of every day, or are we destroying it every hour of every day? And you're like, well, a little bit of both. Well, no. We can use, say The world is broken up into two parts, and we can do that, an infinite number of times. But we started talking about it from the very beginning with Eric Fromm's book here. On disobedience, right? And he was the one who basically divided the world into constructive and destructive people. So we can be a little bit of both, right? We can say we're a little bit of both, but generally we have a nature that is generally more positive, optimistic, contributing, cooperative, right? Approach motivated. From a psychological perspective, we call that approach motivated. We seek, we're curious, right? As opposed to avoidance, not approaching individuals, right? And so, and also, right, destructive versus constructive, actively doing what? What does that person do when they're active? Not passive, but what does that person do when they're active? So in this book, divided the world into constructive people and destructive people. And, I think that is a pretty good call. All right, so we've been talking about, and then bringing to mind or bringing to the forefront as I learn with you guys, some of these psychological studies that we've been looking at, right? So starting with Milgram's study, we took a look at Ash's line experiment. We looked at bystander intervention and when people are willing to help other people who are in need. We looked at helping behavior and looking at that this is a universal and natural tendency. And now we've been spending a lot of time on Robber's Cave. And even going into communism and our prisoners of war and the strategies that are used to change our thinking on purpose. Now, what is all this about to me? For you. So you can sort of see the organization of this. Because I do learn as I'm going, and I do sort of, collect things on the fly. I see the relationship, but sometimes I want to make sure I'm communicating the relationship as I go from one thought to the next in this philosophical classroom. So the very first thing about this that bothered me. I wanted to talk about these interesting studies, and that stirs up what I know to be great philosophical conversations, right? But in the process, I have learned, especially over the past year, not just in this classroom, but over the past year, that there are all kinds of psychological studies that we haven't talked about. And the ramifications or talked about it in its full entirety like we should be, like Milgram's study, or more in particular, this Robert's Cave study, right? And so I'm finding that there seems to be this hidden agenda, and this hidden agenda in psychology specifically, and this hidden agenda seems to be affecting people really very, very in everyday life, in their everyday life. So in our spiritual classroom, I was talking about the survival of the Jewish people. The Jewish people has to do with the survival of the word, and specifically the Torah. And when the word dies, that Torah dies, the word dies, that's when the Jewish people will no longer exist. And the word is supposed to be infinite. All right. So there should be, so what we're saying is that there should be no end to, or that this is a people that can last forever. So based on the word. Well, what I see going on here is just exactly what the title is. Just exactly what the title is. And this active With every mistake, we must surely be learning. And so this active and intrusive march towards more knowledge and how it is diminishing the soul, right? I've got that Atlantic Monthly, which I left off on, right? So the Atlantic Monthly, I left off on those, and I started reading more, and I really need to get that so that I could bring these things together for you, right? But the idea here was in the Atlantic Monthly was the idea was is being evil, is that cool? Now this article was written like in the 1980s, right? Or maybe it was the 1990s. I gotta go get it. It's upstairs. But the idea here was, in my mind, was that true evilness is abandoning the word. And you can abandon that in all kinds of ways. The consequences are similar across the board, sometimes greater, sometimes lesser. If I write a book that is a fiction book and I abandon the word, the truth, you would say, no biggie, it's fiction, right? Big deal, it's fiction. I know she might abandon reality or the word. So no great big infraction, no great big lawbreaker right there, right? Rule breaking. But what if I were to write the words for this? Who really created democracy? Well, it's a debate. This is a debate. But you might expect that the two sides of this debate are closer to the truth than a fiction story, right? And if it were an autobiography, you might expect it to be that much more closer to the truth, right? So there are all different variations of truth, and there are all different kinds of expectations for that truth. So when I do a scientific experiment and then go on to teach about this science across the board, right? And then scream that you are some kind of a, inbreeder if you don't have science, technology, engineering, mathematics behind you like some robot just gulping this stuff down the way that we feed it to you, well, then you're an idiot if you don't do that, according to STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So this is what we're being taught in psychology. This is what we're being taught is science. And I will also say, and I do stand by this, that these scientists, I would even say before medicine, the scientific, the ones that are true to scientific design are psychologists. You simply do not have to be in medicine like you do in psychology. Adhere to scientific design. Why? Because if I find a cure to something, I don't have to do all these other things. I can do a straight shot to distributing that cure if I find it, right? If it is a cure, I can go. Especially if no side effect cure, yada, 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 beeline to the population, right? Now, we test things, right? But even in testing, we see with the COVID vaccine and virus that they don't test those things like using the scientific method. So medicine is far from adhering clearly to the scientific method. The people who adhere the most to scientific method are, and I'm not trying to be biased, it's psychologists. And the reason why we have to be is because we are making great claims. We're making great claims, not great claims that can change you or the world, but great claims regarding how to change something that is very elusive, like personality, right? All of a sudden got a window up there that I had to So, so it's psychologists who do no scientific method. I have to measure behavior. I have to see that if my form of reward for your behavior will keep you motivated in that behavior, right? I have to adhere to very clear scientific method. I have to control for a lot of things. We don't control for a lot of things in medicine. Why? Because we simply can't in medicine. Somebody comes here with a disease. I may be studying it, but I can't use control groups in the same way that I can with the behavioral study, right? So the people who would truly, you could debate this if you want with me, but look it up, and I would have to say that experimental psychologists, not all psychologists, certainly not clinical psychologists at all, they don't know anything about the experimental method, scientific method. They don't adhere to it. They have no reason to. Although I think that they do, but they don't. But they sort of don't, and then they go in line with the pharmaceuticals and all that other kind of stuff. So that's not the same thing. I'm talking about experimental psychologists. These people are the ones who are supposed to be adhering to scientific method more so than anybody else, and they have the ability. Psychologists have the ability and they have the knowledge to adhere to the scientific method. So when you read about something as outstanding, and being a social psychologist first, right? Something so outstanding as these experimental social psychological studies that they've been doing that are field experiments. And so what do we care about this for? That it's a field experiment. It's because it's a study that's done in the real world. If it's not done in the real world, we don't know for sure whether or not it would really happen in the real world, right? Would somebody really go to the end of that Milgram's shock box, go all the way to the end, and then in the real world, without saying anything, a person falls down over there, because they're not going to be behind a glass, whatever, would they? And as I'm reading this and a lot of these things, there are people who are angry and mean and cruel and engage. We were even talking about this here. So people who were autocratic, right? Dictators and autocratic. So the only rule and leader, and they were cruel about it. So their nature wasn't a nature of constructivism, right? Giving, whatever. They had a nature. So they talked about Solon here from the Greek era and whether or not he promoted democracy. And he did. But then his son and his son's son did not. And they wanted all the power. So here you've got people every day, wherever you're talking about, who again are constructive and destructive. But if psychologists are the masters of experimental design, we are the gatekeepers. We are the people who will point to your study and say that does not follow experimental design. I'm not saying all psychologists do follow experimental design. Clearly, I am saying that they do not. Hello. Clearly, I am saying they do not follow scientific design, but the person who could pick out the flaws in scientific design and scientific method, in the scientific method, would be more than anyone else, experimental psychologists. We are the ones who have to follow that design. And then when you read on and on and on and on about the biases that these individuals had, it just boggles the mind that they can even call themselves scientists. So we were talking about the Lucifer effect, right? And so Philip Zimbardo, who I also wanted to bring up his name and nail as well, for doing the same kind of atrocities, following in the same kind of lead that set the example. Now, I will say something. Lucifer Sharif backed off at first because he did not think that the scientific community would allow him to do this. This is one of the earliest studies, before Milgram's study and before Ash's line study. Although Ash's studies were in the 1930s, so we're doing these around the same time. And he was concerned about this field study would not be accepted by psychologists, that they would say it's unethical. And that's the reason why he didn't report on Robert's Cave study number 2. It wasn't called Robert's Cave, it was something else, right? But all the same kinds of studies. This is the reason why he didn't report on it. He didn't think it would be accepted in the psychological community. Same thing with Milgram. Same thing with Lucifer effect, Philip Zimbardo. And you know what? They've all been well-established, prominent experimental psychologists in the field. So Lucifer Sharif was worried that he would get ostracized for his methodology. The problem is that the scientific community, the scientific psychological community, did not. They did not reprimand him. And now we've got study after study that is just manipulating human beings in the name of what? In the name of what? Well, it seems like communist tactics to me. In the name of communist tactics. We have got to stop this at the university level. This is what's going on. It's going on in medicine and it's going on in psychology. That they claim that they're going to teach you science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And all that it is their version of it. Their version. Because they've closed their ears and their eyes and their mouths to any other version. So what is the theme here that I'm talking about? Why am I talking about this? What is my major point in my major theme? You know, when we were talking in a spiritual classroom, we're talking about, again, I said, wiping out, if you were to wipe out the Jewish people, we had the lamplighter here. So I'm gonna go and show it to you here, okay? So we had the lamplighter here, this article, and it is about here, I'll show it to you. It's the perseverance of the Jewish people. So we're talking about the blessings that Abraham had, and one of the blessings is that they were blessed. And so we see this Jewish people that amount to 1/4% of the Earth's population, and standing in the time of Pharaoh and the Egyptians, who would still be here at that time. Rome fell, the Greeks fell, the Egyptians fell, and we are in the cusp of watching democracy fall here in the United States, which is then one step. And who was in charge of democracy? The Greeks. Who won the battle? Was it the colonists? No, it was the Greeks. It was the Greeks. And at that time, there was no government. So here, when we're talking about who really created democracy, at the time of the colonists, at the time that this book was written, the only predecessor to our democracy here in the United States was ancient Greece. That was the predecessor to democracy here in the United States. Now over 100 nations are democratic. But before the United States, there was one, and that was Greece. Athens, Greece. And what happened? That also fell as well. So all of these people and all of these nations did not survive history, but the Jewish people did. So to wipe out their history, right? Oh, the Bible's not real. We're all atheists. Oh, really? Because that's a history of a people. So you want to, if you wipe out the Torah, you, according to scripture, according to theory, you wipe out the Jewish people. But that is also when the sun doesn't rise and set any longer. So will you be able to? You will not be You will not be successful. I've got a bad connection going on here. So that's what we're talking. So the same thing. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying you want to wipe out the human spirit. And this is how you wipe out the human spirit. You make everybody turn into robots. Who has got better authority on turning people into robots other than the communist? No better authority, and no better authority likely than communist China on turning people into robots. What I'm saying is the likelihood of you doing that is as likely as you wiping out the Torah. You can do it to a certain degree. I absolutely agree with you there. Because why? Because we have enough people who've wiped out the word in God's heart. Or in our heart. God's word from our heart. Wiped it out from our heart. But it's no different than this. The atrocities that we see here. And it's just at a magnitude that is incomprehensible to me. This is at a magnitude that is incomprehensible. Why? Why? Because you are working with children. You are lying and you are manipulating children. And I'm going to speak out, not because I feel that it is only my voice that is going to make the difference. I do believe God works through people. Philosophical discussion. Sorry, guys, we might have a spiritual discussion here too as well, right? So I do believe that this is all part of God's plan, but he does, right? Because otherwise, this would win. This would win. Philosophically speaking, if you don't believe in something better, this will win. And why should it? When we know what? With every mistake, we must surely be learning. But we're not. But we aren't. Why? Because with all of this that we've got, books and books and books of all this science behind behavior and all the things that they're studying, the spirit still rises. The spirit still rises. The Torah still exists, and the 25% of 1% of the Jewish people are still here. So you keep trying to do your STEM, your science, turning people into robots, creating chaos to see whether or not they give up their spirit, whether or not they learn helplessness, critical thinking class, go to the critical thinking class. Will they give up? And I've said it time and time again. No, no, no. The only thing that we should be learning is that people will not give up to the status of robot. They just will not relent to the status of robot. That's the reason why we're here. It's the reason why we're here. But that being said, that does not deny the damage that has been done. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody the other day on Friday evening. It was a really nice conversation. We were talking about hooking up, people hooking up, and the casual emotional detachment that this is. And we talk about attachment and critical thinking classroom, right? And about whether this is really, whether the human spirit is capable of having sex, intimate sex with somebody and being completely detached. And so there is a young man and an older man, my age, and a young man, my son's age, a little bit younger than my son's age. And what he said was that if there was such an emotional detachment in the act of sex, why is it so emotionally damaging when someone is raped? Because why couldn't they just lay there like it's a hookup, right? And it's no big deal. How could it be so emotionally damaging to a person when they're raped if I can function like a robot and just hook up and have sex? All right, something to think about. I want you to think about that. I don't really have an answer. You should think about that. I want you to think about that. If you have any comments, put the comments below on that. But If we could just hook up and act like robots in bed and not become emotionally detached, why is it so emotionally traumatizing when somebody is raped? And now let me go one step further then. Why can't we have sex with children then? If sex is just simply a physical act where we can be, by choice, detached emotionally from that act, then why is it that that it would be wrong to have sex with children? And let me say this. Look up Alfred Kinsey. I've got a video on the Kinsey report that I can't share with you, but look up the Kinsey report and what psychologists were reporting on that. And where is it? Alfred, yes, Kinsey got his data from, because he got his data from that he was reporting on sexual activity, arousal, and orgasm for children who are newborn all the way up to, I think it was 18 months. Okay, so how does he get that data, number one? And if the act of sex can be detached, then the person it could be detached the most from would be an infant, because the infant would have no knowledge and no memory. So no words for the act, right? It is simply a physical act. As long as I am not actually hurting you, then the sexual act should be perfectly legit. There should be no carryover of that sexual act into childhood or adulthood. And then there shouldn't be anything wrong with that act. And let me be here, in case you're just getting just a portion of this, that is an unbelievable mental, physical, and spiritual annihilation of a human being. And it occurs without knowledge or words. That annihilation will occur without knowledge or words in an infant if they experience any kind of sexual violation. So if we can emotionally detach when we're having sex, then why is the trauma of unwanted sex, unsolicited sex, unloving sex so traumatic for individuals? And again, so now I'm going down this road to get you to be able to really wrap your brain around and think about in depth the kind of trauma that people experience when they have unwanted sexual contact, unsolicited, undesirable, unloving sexual contact. Without knowledge or words, you should be able to detach. With the concept of the sexuality that we're going into, that is so cavalier and casual about sexual activity, right? We are one hop, skip, and a jump away from imposing that kind of sexual trauma on vulnerable populations. I clearly see it on individuals who are mentally, what is the right word to use right now, right? Have mental deficits, right? I see that people are taking clear advantage of individuals who have any mental deficits whatsoever. It's not hard to get somebody who is not intellectually savvy to be physically enticed. And once you start that, you can end up controlling, very easily controlling, especially physically, individuals who don't have the mental capacity to know any differently and get enticed by that. And it's easy to entice anybody, much less individuals who don't have a mental capacity for something as challenging as mental exercises or spiritual exercises, just physical exercises. I want you to hear what I'm saying, because I'm speaking a lot of words in order to make sure that you're getting the right message and you aren't trapped in the political correctness of the statement. I'm trying to be politically correct in the statements that I'm making, but I don't want you to lose sight of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you abandon the concept of how we treat people for science, technology, math, and engineering, when you just forego humanity, as we've seen time and time again, the slippery slope will be that individuals will have no reason not to study sex, sexual arousal, sexual penetration on infants. There would be no reason not to. Why? Why? They wouldn't have a spirit. They don't have a higher power. They don't have an energy. They don't have something other than their physical body. They don't have knowledge. They don't have words. They don't have energy. They don't have a spirit. They don't have anything, but we give them their blank slates. Tabula rasa. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. Probably. So why not? Why not impose those things? How could we possibly assume trauma after that if we are simply an animal, right? So with every mistake, we must surely be learning. Are we? Where are we? Oh, shoot. In past time. And we have to get to our story, which I get. Oh, no. We're at 3 o'clock, right? And then we do our story at 3 o'clock, at 3:15. Okay, so we're doing okay. All right. So with every mistake, we must surely be learning. With every mistake, we must surely be learning. Learning what? Learning what? Learning how to turn people into spiritless animals. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. With every mistake, we must surely be learning. And it's not even just, the challenge of that statement. It's not even just that. It's the level of that statement, which is set to music. It's the level of that statement. It's set to music. With every mistake, we must surely be learning, but we're not. And I'll sell it to you in the most beautiful and the most poetic way, with this beautiful lyric, with this beautiful song that says, "While my guitar gently weeps." And then the science, technology, engineering, mathematics robot says, "Your guitar can't weep." And then that person says, and that robot tells you, "Get back in line because your guitar can't weep." What the F are you talking about? Because you know what? Your guitar can't weep. Oh, all the things that are lost. With every mistake, we must surely be learning. And all the things that are lost, we must surely be learning. We must surely be learning. And all that is lost in the music and the art and the poetry and the humanity and the dignity and the respect and the conversation in the words, in the look, in the cues, in the love, in the depth, in your eyes, in your mouth. All of it. That's what we want to just soak in. That's what we want to soak in. When I feel warmth and the sun shining on me in tenderness, it's not an algorithm I want. It's not a technology magazine that I want to read. Who the F wants to read that? Honest to God, who wants to read that? Simply a robot. Just plug it in. Just plug it in. Give me the data. Give me the information. That's what I want, right? Not the beauty in the art, right? Oh, where is that? Where is that? Oh, hold on just a minute. I'm going to find it. I will find it. Here it is. No, that's not it. Mm. Oh, what's it called? I know it was said by Robert Kennedy. I got it. I got it. And we can end with this. Oh, probably not. We might not. And get my little head in there. The gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriage, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither wit nor courage, neither our wisdom nor our teaching, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And I'm going to tell you right now that anything, technology, of course, has made life easier for us. It's made life easier for us so that we could make life worthwhile, right? When we continue to ignore what our spirits really, let me see what I got going on here. Okay. When we continue to ignore the things that our spirits really need, what we end up doing is exactly what this theme is about. We end up destroying human dignity every hour of every day. Why? Because we're worried about what? The gross national product, which does not allow for the health of our children, for the education of for the health of our children, their education, or the joy of their play. Our gross national product does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages. Why? Because those are the things that make life worthwhile. The gross national product does not account for the intelligence of our public debate or the integrity of our public officials. Those are the things. Public debate, intelligent public debate, and integrity of public officials. Those are the things Robert Kennedy is saying makes life worthwhile. The national product doesn't measure our wit. It doesn't measure our courage. It doesn't measure our wisdom or our teaching. Those things, wit and courage and wisdom and teaching, Those things make life worthwhile. The gross national product does not allow for our compassion or our devotion to our country. Our compassion and our devotion to our country, those are things that make life worthwhile. And so what is this emphasis all the time on getting rid of the spirit of those things, the spirit of courage, the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of wittiness, the spirit of relationships, right? Why are we spending so much time at our universities with an outcome of depression and anxiety and sexual confusion, sexual anxiety, isolation, epidemics of loneliness and apathy? Universities. What the F? Honest to God, what the F? And what? And you kick me out of a position without any merit, without any evidence, without even a reason, because you don't pay attention to wisdom and courage and wit and harmony and beauty and debate. You don't pay attention to those things, and intellect and teaching. You don't pay attention to those things. What are you teaching? What are you teaching? Because if you were teaching what you're supposed to be teaching, then I would know that with every mistake, we would surely be learning. Go watch that video if you would. While my guitar gently weeps, I'm just going to pull it up here for a quick second so that you can see it, okay? And then we're out of here. All right, I am going to bring it up. I'm probably going to get myself in trouble for it. But I'm just going to give you just a small piece of it. It's not what I wanted. Hold on. There we go.
I said I'd never join.
Y'all living on sub would be too hard.
I figured only the weatherman tried.
my mirror.
How about that? Okay, all right, we're done. It's 3 o'clock. Join me in 15 minutes. We're going to be reading the story. Who is Jane Goodall? All right, thanks. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm a teacher. I hope you liked that version of The Classroom. One of my favorite songs. All right, see you tomorrow. No, Thursday. Philosophical Classroom on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll be back here on Thursday.